Welcome to our leadership journey. We are Mike Cloutier and Peter Yanuszewski, and our goal is to interview people leaders at different stages of their career, from frontline managers to CEOs, and extract the leadership lessons they've learned on their journey to help you become a better leader. On this episode of our leadership journey, we have the privilege of speaking with Jeff Leger. Jeff is the president of Shoppers Drug Mart, a leading Canadian pharmacy retailer with over 1,300 stores that has been named one of the most admired companies and trusted brands in Canada. Under his stewardship, Shoppers Drug Mart has expanded into virtual healthcare, launched health and beauty clinics, and acquired Lifemark Health Group. In 2019, Jeff was recognized as Chain Drug Review's Retailer of the Year. Prior to joining Shoppers, Jeff worked in the hospital and generic pharmaceutical manufacturing sectors. Jeff is a licensed pharmacist, having graduated from Dalhousie University, later earning an MBA from the University of Moncton. In our broad discussion, we covered the need for leaders to listen first, being empathetic while driving change, and the utility of radical candor.
So welcome back, everyone. We're really thrilled today to have Jeff Leger of Shoppers Drug Mart Loblaws joining us on the leadership journey. And so welcome, Jeff. To kick things off, why don't you tell us a little bit about your leadership journey?
Currently, I'm president of Shoppers Drug Mart. I've been in this role for about 3.5 years, and I've been with Shoppers in different roles over the last 12. So progressive leadership roles in pharmaceuticals and health, and now leading the whole company. But I started, with the pharmaceutical industry and also in pharmacy practice. I'm a pharmacist by training, so it's been a very different experiences over the past couple of years.
I noticed when I was checking through on your profile and catching up that you're engaged with quite a variety of different areas in the past and currently, covering a lot of different parts of healthcare delivery. And I was thinking that there must be tremendous value in being able to see healthcare delivery through a few different lenses in order to be, increasing your value proposition. Can you talk a little bit about, your plan in terms of doing that?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I started out as a pharmacist back in New Brunswick. I worked in hospitals, so I saw the public sector side of healthcare delivery, and then moved into the pharmaceutical industry, working in the generic space with Apotex in Eastern Canada, but also here based in Toronto. So got a view for what the pharmaceutical industry looks like, at least from that perspective. And then with Shoppers, I've been in very different roles: manufacturing, procurement, long-term care, and then now, and then for a period of time, delivery in the community pharmacy setting. And all of those experiences have come together to give me, I think, a fuller view of how things play out in the system from a patient perspective, but also from a provider and also from a payer. So it's been incredibly helpful to land in the role that I'm in today with actually that varied experience. And every little area has built, I think, on my knowledge base and also some leadership skills over the time.
Jeff, one conversation Mike and I were having just as you were actually dialing in was in sort of doing a little bit of research for this conversation. And some of this I was aware, some of it I sort of understood during my research, but the number of things that Shoppers Drug Mart covers. I mean, I think most Canadians think Shoppers Drug Mart, that's my local drugstore. That's where I pick up my pharmaceuticals. But there's the beauty shop that's at the front. There's the groceries. Mm-hmm. There's the specialty health network, which some of us that work in the pharmaceutical side interact. There's the investment in Maple from a digital perspective. There's it seems like you guys are all like fairly broad. So what is the future of Shoppers Drug Mart? Like, where are you guys heading? What's the grand vision?
So the grand vision as it relates to healthcare, so we'll keep it to that as opposed to beauty and the other parts of our store, which are also a really fascinating story. But we stay on healthcare. for us, it's really to become a healthcare services company. So we have this vision of really being at the center of omnichannel healthcare. Our purpose at Loblaws is helping Canadians live life well. Specifically, Shoppers is your life made easier. So if we're looking at the Canadian healthcare system, it's a really great system. You get great care, but it's not easy to navigate. It's not easy to find the right point of care. So as you mentioned, we have a bunch of different touch points in a bricks and mortar manner. So we have community pharmacies all across the country. Those pharmacies are within 85% of Canadian populations within 10 kilometers of one of the locations. We're open late. Pharmacists are very accessible, and we also have about 600 medical clinics that are on our properties that we have varying degrees of relationship with in terms of patient care. And then we also cover other areas like specialty, as you mentioned, and long-term care. So we touch lots of points of people's lives. And then the final one that's really accelerated in the past more than 20 months, but specifically in 20 months is digital healthcare. And we've invested over the couple of years in a company, one called Maple, which is a virtual care company. And then we've also have a small investment in a company called League, which powers our PC Health app, which we view as a point of entry. So for sure, there's a great physical network, and we believe that we'll be able to do more, especially with the expanded scope of practice for pharmacists. But people will also want to be able to navigate digitally and also carry a record of this too. So we launched PC Health back in September, and it has Maple embedded in it, and it has a bunch of other ways to be able to communicate or chat with a nurse practitioner, care provider, to allow you to find what care you're looking for. Is it something that's more acute that can be resolved by a physician through virtual care or nurse practitioners? Or is it something that can be dealt with in a pharmacy, either through virtual care or physically to kind of go in? So we help navigate, I think, is probably a good way of doing that. And so it's exciting. Like we're at the center of, I think, a big healthcare transformation in terms of where things are going. Yeah.
You had mentioned somewhere that you think the COVID pandemic has sort of accelerated the transition to digital health by about 2 to 3 years. Is that estimate still accurate? I can't remember. I don't know when that last conversation was held, but is that accurate now?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think so. We're going to see a resettling of it whenever post COVID is. So probably many months from now. But the new baseline will be much higher. So I think there's a lot of practitioners, physicians, nurse practitioners, and I think health systems also think that there's a better way, I think, to deliver certain types of care. And sometimes it could be by telephone, which is, the large portion of how things are being delivered through what we call, virtual or it's the either chat or telephone is certainly still a big part of that. But then video also through virtual care, I think the baseline will be higher. And there's no doubt, because it's so much more convenient for patients and also for practitioners too. It's much more efficient.
The diversity of roles and levels and positions and business interests within, the area that you're responsible for. What is it that you folks are doing? Maybe a two-part question. What are you doing organizationally to help leaders be the best leaders they can be, given that dynamic? And then I guess the second part would be, what do you do specifically to stay on top?
Yes. So we try to move people around. So we try to give them diversified experiences at the middle management level, and certainly as they move through the executive ranks. Are we looking at more of an operational role that we're looking at execution, P&L? Or are we looking at something that's a bit more around strategy, innovation? And we look at moving people around so that they can get those skill sets, because in some cases they're very different experiences, and some people gravitate through their career, maybe one or the other a bit more, and we like to have people that can do both, especially at where our company's at. We're certainly not a stagnant organization. We're innovation across, our front shop, around beauty, around food, around center of store, around customer experience and automation, how we're using that to enhance customer experience. And then we have it in pharmacy quite significantly. And we also have it in our digital health businesses or our health and wellness business. So that's how we try to do it, especially for people that we see that have some opportunity to aspire to different roles and move up. And for me personally, currently, it's a very fun job, because in the morning I could be speaking to a minister of health as it relates to something around healthcare or the pandemic or health transformation. Midday, I could be speaking to one of our partners in the food section or in the middle of store and talking about how we're laying out merchandising, how the flow of the store could lay out, and how we're trying to optimize the customer experience at the checkout. And at the end of the day, I could be speaking to the president of Estee Lauder or Chanel, talking about the latest from a beauty perspective, because we're Canada's largest beauty player too. So part of my journey is staying up to speed on the trends in each area, helping support the leaders that I have in that area, in those areas. And the way I like to do that is to really understand the business, to be somewhat involved in the paths that they're choosing, and provide some advice, and then also defer to them where I know that they're the experts.
Excellent.
Jeff, so I noticed that Shoppers Drug Mart, it was named one of the most admired companies in Canada. It was one of the most trusted brands by the Gustafson Brand Trust Index. So why do you think that is? What drives this perception of Shoppers? Why is it so positive in Canada? What are you guys doing differently?
It has a long history of trust. So, started out with Murray Koffler in 1962 as a pharmacy concept, where he thought he had a really strong concept around mixing great pharmacy care and open cell front shop, and then moved into a scenario where he wanted to expand it into a broader concept. And the way he did that was by creating associate owners. So very consistent experience across the country. If you go to any one of our pharmacy locations, they're very consistent in terms of how they look, how they're laid out. And I think that started us on a journey of one thing, which was, expanding our model by having a pharmacist owner, which I think is a critical thing, because at the center of our business is pharmacy and really caring for people, which gives you a halo effect around trust, and also obviously a frequency of visits from customers or patients. And that's built out, fast forward many decades, it's built out into a concept it's quite world renowned. 52% of our sales comes from the front shop, 48% comes from pharmacy. That's unique, one of the most unique blends in the world. Mostly it's high pharmacy, low front shop. But the reason why that's important is because we've been able to expand the same concept of trust into beauty. And the personalized experience that we have around a beauty advisor in your local community, where you can be inspired around the latest looks, or also you may be going through a health crisis or a health issue where you need some help around looking your best when you don't feel the best, and then on through the store. So at the center of it is we have this associate owner who's a pharmacist, who's a healthcare professional first and foremost. But then also creates this caring environment around the store through the different departments. It's really quite unique, and it's really humbling to lead this company, because it's been consistently in the top 5 around corporate culture or corporate responsibility or trust across all those studies. One of my favorite is the Leger study, no relation. But
I was actually going to ask you that, actually. Yeah.
And we've been often. Last year we were number 1. This year we're number 2. So we have to track down Canadian Tire. But it's incredibly a powerful concept, and it starts with being embedded in the community with that health side of it as the first point.
So again, just touching on a little bit related to the diversity and, you know, I am still amazed at this point that, you know, electronic medical records and individuals' ability to participate in their healthcare hasn't expanded as quickly as I would have thought, you know, 20 years ago, 10 years ago. We probably are seeing more now than we have in the past. But can you comment about the relationship between multiple providers and the patient, and how, or the individual, and how, what is the role that you see for the pharmacy in the future?
Yes. So from a data perspective, the pharmacy is a repository of some important information for patients or for customers, especially as they're going through a health journey. Part of our strategy around digital health was to create an app, which I mentioned earlier, which is called PC Health,
Mhm.
which will be a digital point of entry into healthcare. So we think that will be part of trying to solve the connectedness, because we do have good data, but it's mostly in silos. It's not shared, and data not shared, gives you an incomplete picture of what could be a better health outcome or a better kind of source of treatment. So this is our attempt to help. We also have an EMR, an electronic EMR, or an EMR that we purchased in 2016 called QA or Accuro, which is the single largest platform. So we plan over time to help connect those, not just with our own assets, but other, like the government, the
Right.
provincial system, or our competitors, to make sure that information moves as efficiently as possible. Canada is definitely behind in that regard. And we're just trying to play our role, and we think that we have a unique offering, at least from that point of entry, and the services that we provide to do that. It's even electronic prescribing has a very low penetration in Canada.
Mhm.
When you look at other jurisdictions, like many states in the U.S., well north of 95% of prescriptions are delivered electronically. That it's safer, it's more efficient. There's an opportunity to have records that move through different points of, whether it's the EMR or the health record. So I think it's an interesting area that we want to play a role in, and we think we can be helpful because of the pieces that we currently are stewards of on behalf of patients. And we think we can also help provide care when people need it the most. So.
As I understand it, Jeff, under your leadership, there's about 1,200 employees across Canada. That estimate might be incorrect, but that's what I got on Google. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And what we call our store support. Yeah.
So that's a large group of people. So when you think about your leadership of this organization, again, that seems to be getting a lot of accolades, is perceived very well externally. How do you want to be remembered as a leader among the people that are on your team?
So I think as an empathetic or compassionate leader, so somebody that understands the conditions that we're in, but yet also somebody that's courageous to drive change in an organization that's actually been very successful. And I think we've been successful because we haven't just stayed static. I think this is an organization that really likes to learn, and even though we do well, we actually are very self-reflective, and I like that approach. You should never think you figured it out. Like, you should always be trying to make it better and trying to improve the business. So I'd say courageous, empathetic, compassionate, and a certain degree of resilience, which is required these days in terms of being able to drive things. So those are my areas that I'd like to be remembered for.
And Jeff, you mentioned that this idea of trying to get better all the time. So if you think about yourself starting on your leadership journey, what do you think was a strength of yours that was more or less innate? And then what are the things that you've really had to sort of work over the years to develop to become the leader you are today?
Mm-hmm. So I think I was always a very quietly reflective person, or like a thoughtful person, more of a listener than somebody that would speak a lot. And I think that helps to, if you're not speaking all the time, it makes it a lot easier to see what's going on, where are the strengths, who are people that work really well, and who you can emulate. So I think that part was kind of innate. The area that took a bit more time is, certainly early in my career, I wasn't a big fan of being out in the front. I'd prefer the team approach. I prefer a broader, it's all about us, and then to finding that right balance of being in the front, but yet still kind of holding on to that I'm part of the whole group, and we're going to win this together. But yet you need to also lead, and you need sometimes to lead from the back. Sometimes you need to lead from the front. So that part took a little bit of time, but I think I found the right balance. So those are some of the areas that I think that were innate, and some that I learned.
Excellent.
Jeff, from a leadership perspective, over the pandemic, and again, any changes? How have you been leading differently now than you were back in early 2020 or before?
It's interesting because I was talking to a couple of my team members this past week and a half, because we have over 1,350 locations. They're all associate pharmacists owned. So we're a large franchise system, but that has a high degree of consistency, as you know. So very much with strong influence from the center, but very much localized impact and localized commitment to delivering care in the communities. So a couple of things. Things were moving so quickly during the pandemic, and it was hard for everyone. So hard for, obviously, healthcare providers, hard for governments to get it right, or to know exactly where things were going and to react as quickly as possible. So when we went through this period of time, we obviously had a very strong strategy to move to digital health, to move to expand scope of practice. All that was in place well before the pandemic. What I was trying to balance with our team, like collectively, is like, how far do we go? Like, how far do we push? Can we put new technology in place faster? Should we take some risks to unburden the pharmacists to allow them to do more? How do we advocate to continue to deliver more vaccines in pharmacy, because we just know that they're more convenient and easier, and some provinces move faster than others. So all of that became a game of calculating. We see an opportunity to advance our strategy really meaningfully, which is completely aligned with what was needed from Canadians from us. So that was exciting. So I would say that I'm already a very action-oriented leader, so I like to move quickly. Is once we've established our strategy, and if it's on strategy, we can move very quickly, and people are empowered to do that. To having to move even faster and to change decisions quickly, sometimes a couple times a week. We brought our associate franchisees in, so we brought them, a representative group of them, to help us with those decisions, to make sure that we were carrying on at the front lines too. It's hard. So yes, there's 1,200 employees with the central office, but if you include all of our franchisees or associate owners and their teams, there's 55,000 people.
Wow.
So how do you mobilize, so myself, Jeff, or our team going, we really see this opportunity for you to play a bigger role in primary care. Stop doing these three things, and let's get you to do this across 1,000 owners, across 6,000 pharmacists. Like, how do you get that message across? Can you give enough of the why? Can you get them to change? Like, change is hard, so especially in a pandemic. So we learned a bunch of new things about how to do it faster. We made some mistakes, like every organization. and we gained a deeper understanding of some of our government partners too, how we can help them move to so speed, mobilizing large group, changing quickly. All those things were, I think, very much evident. And as horrible as this pandemic has been, those experiences sometimes don't happen in that very short period of time where you can learn those skills, or you can, deepen them as a team. So one small tiny thing out of that was actually good from a management perspective, with a lot of bad.
Okay, so Jeff, this will be the rapid fire section. And you've been somewhat prepared, because I did share with you the questions. Whether you looked at them or not, I'm not sure, but we'll find out
Just
shortly.
briefly.
See how much he stumbles.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, Jeff. So first question. If someone wrote a biography of your professional journey to date, what would be the title?
Always Be Listening.
So if this biography of yours, Always Be Listening, a biography of Jeff, if this was picked up, the rights were picked up, and they were going to develop a movie of this book to put on the big screen, your career journey, who would be in the lead role?
We're going to go Colin first.
Yes, of course. Yes, that makes perfect sense.
That's who I would have picked.
Yeah. No, that's perfect. Okay, thank you. Now a maybe more reasonable question, more useful for the audience. And perhaps this isn't something you do all that often, but are there any books that you've handed out to people on your team, to employees, or books that you recommend new leaders should read? Anything along those lines?
There's not one specific book. I've read many, but I don't usually move a book through. But I do sometimes move articles from the Harvard Business Review, or things or from popular culture that I find that are relevant. So yes, I'm not a big believer in. Often the books seem very similar, very similar themes. But I like it when it's contextualized with data or an insight that actually makes things, I think, real, especially to the sector that we're in, whether it's a review on healthcare or deployment around beauty, or change in strategy that regard. That I think is helpful to either help people kind of get to the next level, or help them kind of go through a very difficult time and kind of drive resilience. So those are usually areas that I would kind of focus in on.
And so, Jeff, for you specifically, right? So, I mean, handing books to other people, it can be a little bit touchy, right? Because it's sort of implying that you think they're missing this ingredient that this book tells them to
You
pick
should
up.
read this tomorrow, and we'll talk.
Yeah. So I understand that can be a little bit awkward, but any specific books that come to mind for you during your leadership journey that you've despite the repetitiveness of some of this literature, but is there one or two that really stuck out to you that you thought were quite helpful?
Yeah. So that book would be Radical Candor by Kim Scott. And the reason why I found it very useful is we've just gone through a process with our management board at Loblaws, using that as an example. And any organization can get into a scenario where maybe people aren't challenging each other the same way that they should, and you want to be able to have an environment that it's supportive and empathetic, and that you care about people, but you also need to say what's really going on and really kind of address those issues. And I think Kim does a really great job in that book.
Perfect. Well, thank you for sharing that, Jeff. So, final question for me is where can people find you? Like online? Where's the place where you're most active?
So on LinkedIn, probably from that perspective, is probably the easiest place to find me. Happy to interact with anybody that's interested.
So we will put that in the show notes. And Mike, any final thoughts or comments?
None. So Jeff, thank you so much for joining us and giving us some of your time. We learned a great deal, and your insights were incredibly valuable. So we'll look forward to ongoing future conversations about leadership, and take good care.
Yeah, well, thanks for inviting me. Take care.
Thank you very much, Jeff.
Thank you.